What is Terraria to you? Perhaps Terraria is a single-player experience, a vast open world filled with treasure and monsters for you to brave yourself, a canvas for your creative and sometimes violent desires. Maybe it's a group game where you and a ragtag bunch of friends mess around, blow up their shared house on accident, and have a good time talking to one another about, well, whatever. But no matter how you feel, I guarantee you that once the sun sets, the corpse of a Lovecraftian god-beast rots at your feet, and the world has been painted in your image, an underlying emotion that had always been there begins to flourish. I want more. And so, following the voice of your heart and various YouTube tutorials, you end up downloading T-Mod Launcher and move the right files into the right places to load up the Calamity Mod. My oh my. If I went to an avid Terraria fan and said the word Calamity to their faces, there's around a 90% chance they would go into anaphylactic shock due to sheer PTSD or joy. Diametrically opposed, I know. But still, there's a reason why this mod is so beloved within the community. While it may not have been the first, it was definitely there at the dawn of modding time, and remains being diligently updated to the present. All new ores, biomes, events, bosses, armors, weapons. Come on, there's so many weapons. Mountain Drew decided one day, hey, I'm just gonna make a thing. And taking some inspiration from some of Terraria's earliest mods, he produced the original release of Calamity back in 2016. There wasn't much, but there was enough to call it a mod. The Desert Scourge, Slime God, and all too famous Devourer of Gods were birthed in these early days, as well as a few quality of life changes concerning crafting recipes for essential or heavily sought after accessories and weapons. And that was just the beginning. Calamitas, the Plague-bringer Goliath, a regular Doom Eternal enemy, an angry ice cube, an angry mushroom crab, Providence, the profane one, Calamitas again, a woman? Eventually, all these years later, the Calamity mod would bloom into a flower with innumerable petals and deep roots, sporting a roster of bosses that might as well have the subtitle "Everyone is Here." Each one with a myriad of weapons, armor, and accessories for you to collect. And I'm mentioning all of this to illustrate the very important point that the Calamity mod is something that you play. Alright, I know that sounds redundant, but hear me out. I talked about how we feel when we finish a game. That eerie twitch after we close the application to double click and try again from the top. Personally, I've had it with Breath of the Wild. I'm having it again with Tears of the Kingdom. Companies take advantage of that feeling by releasing DLC that people can pay for, sometimes at the cost of the original game itself. Whether or not that cost is, in fact, worth it depends on the game. Sometimes you're just paying for parts of the game that should have been there from the start. But the beautiful thing about mods is that it's all free, baby! Well, most of the time. Of course, you can donate to mod creators to help with development, link in the description to Vapsol's Patreon, but it's not required. And for this low cost of $0 and nothing cents, you can get dozens upon dozens of hours of content. Remember how I said Calamity was something you played? By that, I meant that Terraria Calamity is basically its own game. So much so that if someone's first experience to Terraria was the Calamity mod, I don't think I'd mind, but that just might be a hot take of mine. Using Red Digit's vision as a base, Calamity delves deep and expounds into what feels like its own world at times. There's just so much, and it all feels so real. While other mods may only add a boss or two, or another class of weapons and armor, modern Calamity looks at the options, throws its arms in the air and says, well, we can do it all. Granted, it took the better half of a decade, but there's simply no denying that the vast amount of content is there. Calamity isn't just the New Game Plus you've been searching for. This is the new game entirely. And I mean that. In every sense of the phrase, even. When you jump into the Calamity mod, you aren't just playing Terraria anymore. This is the Calamity. Alright, we already had a sequence. Let's not make things tacky. Because tacky is the exact opposite of what the Calamity mod stands for. On second thought, let's get back to this one. Something tells me this will be a pretty long topic, so let's get a couple other aspects of this mod out of the way. When you first open up the mod, you may notice something quite different to normal Terraria, specifically two things. They only appear in the Revengeance difficulty, what most consider the normal mode of all the difficulties added. These are quite important to clutching high-stress moments found in the Calamity Mod. This is your rage and adrenaline. Capital, by the way. Think of them as situation-specific boosters or power-ups. They'll only normally really come into play during boss fights and play a slightly impactful role at best, but not keeping them in mind may cost you a run in the end. While playing a very similar role, they have a few key differences. Rage is accumulated by being close to an enemy, and accumulates faster near boss-type mobs. The closer you are, the more you gain, and when the meter's full, you pop it like one of those crazy cysts from the videos I should stop watching at 3 AM. Doing so gives you a 35% damage boost for 9 seconds. Now, adrenaline. Imagine adrenaline as Rage's big buff older cousin. He's harder to get to come over, but when he does, nobody is safe. Adrenaline only fills up when you're fighting a boss, and if you manage to not get hit, for 30 seconds you're rewarded with a whopping 200% damage increase and a 50% damage reduction for the next hit you're subjected to. This is the big one. Popping both this and your rage meter and then seeing the health bar of the boss get chunked like your paycheck after a foul loader is found coming from certain anthropomorphic animatronics is nothing short of euphoric.
That's quite big.
Impressive.
It really scratches that other itch, if you know what I mean. Other than that, the gameplay is quite similar to base Terraria. Explore the world, find materials and NPCs, make or find weapons and accessories, and prepare for boss fights how you see fit. Those are this mod's bread and butter, after all. Terraria and beating crazy bosses are synonymous, more so than the creative aspect, I'd argue. Other sandboxes may prioritize survival, PvP, or building like Minecraft or Astroneer, but Terraria did always have a flair for the spectacle of things. The Calamity Mod does well to lean into this by providing near 24 new boss fights, and its larger focus on combat-orientated content. Yeah, that's sort of its thing, as we'll find out later. For those boss fights, there's certainly a bigger focus on movement, especially later in the game where I feel like I go from a fun pixelated adventure to an ungodly firefight with a crystal-winged devil. If you know anything about Terraria, you should know that movement is key. Various accessories and items are found to facilitate this, such as shields for dashing, boots for increased movement speed, wings for flight, hooks for sudden acceleration, fucking teleportation. Calamity offers multiple upgrades and alternatives between those found in the original game and after where it ends. I said it and I meant it. If you want to introduce a friend to Terraria and just so happen to sneak the Calamity Mod in like a packet of Maltesers on a school trip, that's a-okay with me. Calamity manages to integrate itself so well with the original game that doing so would be no different to playing regular Terraria for the first time. At least, in my opinion. Though, I guess one concern that I would have is that even I, someone who's played this game for hundreds and hundreds of hours, sorta got lost when playing this mod. You can choose to craft armor, weapons, and accessories for certain classes in this game, and you're not hard locked into any one, having the equipment is all you need to switch. But with each class having dozens and dozens of armor sets with 5 times the number of weapons and accessories for each one, you can very easily get lost in the sauce, in a manner of speaking. The wiki was my best friend when I got into Terraria, since the game tells you next to nothing about what the most optimal this or that is. And the same could be said about the Calamity Mod. This obviously very much is the case, as a quick search on YouTube reveals many guides about how to best equip yourself for every boss. Should an external website have to be necessary for you to have the best knowledge of what you're doing? I'm not sure. If you're good enough at the game, you won't need this kind of guidance to get through checkpoints and progression, but I understand the want for preparation before each boss. I'm pretty sure there's an anime about that actually. To each his own, I suppose. I don't particularly mind having to look at a wiki to see what accessory I should craft next, the materials needed, or the subsequent event or bosses I have to triumph in order to acquire it. That small piece of direction could lead to a good hour or two of content grinding that never really feels too stale. Which I suppose leads me to my next point in the topic of gameplay. It's quite simple, really. Calamity follows quite the routine pattern. Grind for gear, build some housing, make an arena, fight a boss. Get better gear, explore a new biome, expand your arena, fight another boss. Ooh, text message. Do an event, find more gear, gather NPCs, fight another boss. Do an event, find more gear, fight another boss. Biome, NPCs, gear, boss. Build, gear up, boss. Biomes change a little, gear, boss. Event, get some gear. Your arena literally touches heaven and hell. Fight another boss. Wow, you finish where the base game ends. That's cool. Have another boss. Boss, 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 gear, boss. Boss, boss, boss. And when you thought it was over, here's a boss rush. We all love those, right? Real staple in the industry. All of this could lead you to believe that the Calamity formula is quite repetitive. You'd be right, but what it isn't is boring. And that's because the Calamity Mod is cool. The Calamity Mod is cool. Have I hammered that in enough yet, or? The sprite work, the aesthetic, the mechanics, the weapons, references, music. Wow, yeah, that's going to be coming back to. Alright, let's frame it like this. Would you like to fight a giant floating eyeball, or this rocket-propelled nuke bee? Would you like to fight a massive slime, or two massive slimes that are gods? Would you like to fight the representation of cosmic unknowing, or that which eats the unknown itself? Well, how about all the above? You can fight a Gundam as a Gundam! What? Calamity makes it no secret that it heavily takes inspiration from other media at times. You only need one look at the boss UI to realize that. Coincidentally, that game also fits the narrative of what I'm trying to convey. Everything about this mod oozes rule of cool. The additional biomes are a great example of that. God forbid I have to talk about bosses any more than I already have. A concept like a viral infection from the stars being the theme for a biome and its equipment just sounds cool, doesn't it? A city made of acid and dust, an underground water haven beneath an arid desert, a pitch-dark suffocating prison of liquid deep below the ocean. Wow, there's a lot of water-themed ones now that I'm looking at it. Which only really enforces how Calamity seeks to add on to what original Terraria had. The ocean in the original game was quite barren. There was, a single late game boss that you could summon there, and an NPC you could recruit as a reward for exploring all the way to the edge of the map. You could do that in the downward direction and unlock hard mode, the second part of the entire game, through Hell and the Wall of Flesh. Even then, Calamity adds more content in Hell, through the Brimstone Crag. What was left as a relaxing, albeit slightly empty area, suddenly became home to a unique aesthetic, new event, and a new perilous dungeon-like area to explore. There were two sides of the map to work with, after all. Keeping them both the exact same just seemed like a waste of potential. In each one of these biomes, you can find materials to help upgrade your equipment or stats. And Calamity doesn't pull any stops when it comes to that either. Take the Biome Blade, for instance. The Biome Blade takes after weapons like the Knight's Edge and Excalibur by providing a way to upgrade weapons, keeping them relevant through certain checkpoints in the game. You're able to tune this blade with specific biomes for different effects, like a lunge, a whip, or pogo stick. These change a little as you upgrade it, but we don't have to get into the specifics. Eventually, it can be crafted into the Galaxia near the end of the game, and then it fuses with another endgame weapon that you can upgrade to create the Arc of the Cosmos, which combines both the parrying and charge mechanics of one and the broken massive AoEs of the other, all finished off with crazy custom animations that just look awesome. I wish I could read all this out to you in a concise and digestible manner, but that's... I mean, just look at that. Isn't that cool? That's only for the warrior class. There are 5 classes you can play in Calamity, and the all-new rogue class that specializes in thrown weaponry, and a new stealth mechanic. You know, I'll be honest, I never fully went through the game as a rogue. It seems like a multiplayer class of sorts. I'm quite curious to hear any of your opinions and experiences on the class though, so leave them in the comments if you have any. As for me, my first playthrough was as a ranger, and the sense of progression I garnered with the Calamity mod was nothing short of delightful. Going from twiddly bow to god-shredding laser machine guns over the course of a week certainly was very fun. Again, present in the base game, but amplified in the mod. Maybe I should just assume you're aware that's how I feel by now. But when you have so many of these equipable aspects to your class, I honestly wonder how you would do it without all these extra mods like magic storage or recipe browser. These tools were so essential that I actually thought they came with the Calamity mod instead of being separate downloads to be conscious of. Nobody really tells you outright that you need these extra mods, but playing without them seems like such a hassle with the sheer volume of content there is through items. Circling back on the entire external website con from before, I do think that everyone who plays through Calamity needs to have at least some of these mods to save at least a couple hours of wiki scrounging and storage management. No, seriously, don't put yourself through the torment. Man, what would I do without... What's this? It was bound to come up eventually. No, there is a lot of lore in Calamity. So much so that I struggle to even mention it in sheer fear of saying something wrong in the almost cosmic but most importantly scattered bits and pieces that lay among the various NPCs, tools, and bosses implemented into the game. In a way, it reminds me of the Souls method of storytelling, maybe watered down a bit though. Progressing the mod earns you lore items. Each boss you encounter drops one and gives insight into places, people, and reveals how you, the player, plays a factor into this world and its deep, deep history. The extent of Terraria's original lore is, hey, this is your good buddy Trent. Over there's living cancer, and I think they want to revive Cthulhu. Pretty simple, right? And while it works for the open sandbox nature of Terraria, this is the Calamity Mod. And it wouldn't be Calamity if it was simple now, would it? Because why would it be? Alright, let's hope my interpretation isn't embarrassingly wrong, shall we? You are the player, a Terrarian dropped in this broken and wasted world, the aftermath of a decades-long crusade against higher forces. Broken as it is, the world of Terraria still houses many beauties, even if that beauty shields more vile and twisted faces. But as you explore, you gain strength and fight against what is left, the remnants of what is long past, and brave them. Unknowingly, by doing so, you tread in the path of a once legendary figure known as Yarum, the God-Seeker. Each lore item you gain writes from a deeper understanding of the creatures and environments you face, and each one is written from the perspective of someone who seems almost all-knowing. I'll give you 3 guesses as to who that possibly is. The God-Seeker Yarum was quite the apt moniker, for it seemed as though Yarum sought out the death of all gods as payment for their ancient transgressions. In times old, Terraria was home to dragons, capital D. They were primordial beings of strength that acted as guardians of the world. Terrarians existed too, and worshipped and served the dragons as deities. I can only assume that Yarum lived during this time too, hailing the dragons with all else as the protectors they were. However, a great evil loomed over Terraria, being the fully awakened Cthulhu, not the empty shell you faced during the game. Its celestial power was almost too much for the dragons, but after great losses they were able to weaken and seal it on the faraway moon, hoping that it should never wake again. Zerathos, from context I have to assume him to be the light dragon, some sort of dragon king or first dragon, was gravely injured in the fight against Cthulhu. It was then that a lonely monk who was in servitude to the dragons came to aid him. However, that was but a simple pretense. The monk took advantage of Zerathos' weakened state and betrayed him, absorbing the light dragon's auric soul for himself and taking the source of their immense power. That power let him ascend to a plane people never thought possible. It allowed him to become a god. And so, the first god allowed himself to be called Xerok. Once tales of godhood spread, the idea of becoming a god began to infect the minds of many, and the people of Terraria rebelled against their protectors in the name of promised power, the promise of turning into an almighty god. Yarum, bearing witness to the deaths of those who had risked themselves to protect this land and its people, grew enraged. The gods, oblivious to it, offered him an auric soul of his own, the soul of Yaron, a dragon with the power of rebirth. As destiny called Yarum to be the god king and rule over all of Terraria alongside them, I think you can guess how Yarum felt about that. Screw that and screw you, he said, the gods sentencing him to death for treason against them and throwing him and the dragon egg that would be Yaron into the pits of hell to burn. They probably didn't read the tooltip because Yaron was a phoenix, and the blazing flames only served to give birth to Yarum's most steadfast companion. Yarum's wrath inspired many to take arms and fight once more against those who had stolen this power from the virtuous dragons that guarded the land of Terraria. He would contract the cosmic engineer Drayden, renowned for his synthetic creations of materials unknown that wrought untold destruction. Taking on Yarum's request for arms, we face his old machines and find his logs in various shelters that detail his research of Terraria and the various tasks he completes with and without the knowledge of the God-Seeker. Eventually, his steely ambition for mechanized decimation put off even the Slayer of Gods, and the two parted ways when the deed was done. The Archmage Permafrost acted as his advisor, managing the civilizations they would create hidden under the watch of the gods, and aided in his warring campaigns. He was a just and righteous man, fit to wield the power of frost that he had, but as Yarum grew more and more wrathful, destroying more than what was necessary, he soon left with his disciple. Eventually we find him trapped in a cold prison of ice, the work of the disciple that he had taken with him, and the name of that disciple was the brimstone witch Calamitas, who served Yarum from the earliest years of her life. While she struggled to control the overwhelming magic that flowed within her, Yarum found that even the gods were unable to fight against it, and the young girl became a weapon, a tool at his disposal to aim at the people he despised so. Drayden created a machine in her image, and we later fight the witch in her full splendor as the current final boss of Calamity. Oh hey, that's the title. And we can't forget about the Devourer of Gods, a self-proclaimed title but a fitting one nonetheless. He was as arrogant as he was gluttonous, his strength only growing with each astral being he consumed. Convincing Yarim to extend his war campaign, the God-Killer contracted Drayden once more to strengthen the Devourer with armor so that he could eat even the strongest of gods. And while Yarim might have known that the DOG was really an SOB seeking only to gain more power, considering his rage against the gods at that time, he could not have cared. Everything in this world is a consequence of his actions. The corruption in Crimson is the remaining essence of a dead god that he was unable to contain. The sulphurous sea was a dumping ground for Drayden's mishmashed and discarded works. The abyss and its horrors only grew due to the goddess of life's corpse that had been cast away. Yaron the Phoenix Dragon's rage only existed as his master had lost his ways, causing it to abandon him as all others have. The poltergeist is a result of his negligence, the tormented and forgotten souls of prisoners and guards Yarim had forgotten about in his conquest. And I need not speak of Drayden and his accursed creations for yet another time. But eventually, after you've exhausted the wastes of Terraria caused by his wrath long ago, Yarim invites you to finally come to him, through a lore item he knows you will receive, for you would not have gathered all this power if not to do just that. Incredibly bastardized is maybe one way to describe that entire lore dump, along with still somehow long-winded and probably completely wrong. But that's how I interpreted all of it. And you're free to call me out on the parts that you think are wrong because, well, you'd probably be right. Honestly, when researching the lore items again to make sure I didn't miss anything, I got confused because it seemed as though not too long ago, the entire Calamity lore got rewritten, which I thought was the case because what on earth is a resplendent phoenix? I don't know what that first word means. What happened to Yaron the Jungle Dragon? Originally, Calamity's lore had Yaron be a big bad evil dude who became a tyrant because his jungle village killed his jungle family. The new Yaron is painted in a much more tragic Greek light, reminding me more of Kratos or Kiritsugu, a real do-what-needs-to-be-done kind of person who loses themselves on their path. Yeah, looking at a lot of this, there's just a ton of fluff that never really implemented into the game's content. Rather, it seemed as though the game's content was haphazardly implemented into the story here, which is, like, honestly one of the worst things you can do. So I'm glad the new lore is much more ambiguous and concise, if you can even call it that. As it stands, the lore does manage to create something coherent, and I'd rather that than, well, this. And that's not bad per se. Whereas the new lore feels like the roots of a tree, the old lore is a lot more like the cables behind a World of Warcraft player's setup. So yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Some of you may even be wondering why this part is in the Why Calamity is Cool section of the video, and I'll tell you why. And this should be no secret if you saw my video on Friday Night Funking. It's because I can sense the love and care put into this creation. You don't just make 50 pages of fluff lore because you hate the project you're making. It's very hard for me to condemn something that's loved so much by its creators when it's anything above piece of absolute shit level. And the Calamity mod is well above that line by about 3 stratospheres. I well and truly believe that the passion conveyed by the bosses, sprites, weapons, and yes, even the lore, all contribute to the enjoyment that we as consumers experience when playing through something like this. It all hits especially hard when we consider the faces behind this mod are tangible people. They interact with the community through things like Discord servers and Reddit, instead of big intimidating corporate names and Twitter. This product is not only loved by the fans, but by the creators. And if you play a lot of indie games or mods, you'll find very quickly how that sentiment correlates to how popular or fun something can get. And for evidence of that love, look no further than the music of the Calamity mod. So many of the songs try and succeed in capturing the mood of an area or a boss. I'm a pretty big music fan in general, and as a rampant and serial extrapolator, I'm ready to share some of my insights that are not at all gonna gaslight you into believing what I believe. Here we go! Heaven's Hell-Sent Gift is the theme of the Astral Infection biome, and it always managed to make me stay in the virus's star-clad grasp for just a second longer to hear those first few notes of that opening piano melody. A fantastic choice to use the piercing, clean sounds of a piano amidst the diluted, spacey drones of synth, reflecting beautifully the macabre nature of a space-borne virus infecting the land. Guardian of the Former Seas plays during the Desert Scourge fight, and while you may think it sounds a little too upbeat and rocky, I think it fits quite well considering this is the first boss many will encounter, and thus encapsulates the adrenaline you'll feel as you dip your toes into Calamity. Plus, the lore of the Scourge's water-based origins is represented in the light steel drum melodies present at the start and repeated in the background throughout. Blood Coagulant is dirty. Very, very dirty. Boasting an irregular time signature from the get-go, one that even I can't really discern with my ear despite years of guitar, this gent track makes it known that it's time to die. The Crimson may be a hive mind, but you're not part of it, and everything here is foreign. But despite the confusion, there's an uplifting melody that cheers for your victory. The Plaguebringer Goliaths fly of the Beelzebub. A chaotic techno overload as you're presented with a nuke strapped to a bee. You eventually realize that this is a nuke strapped to a bee, and things mellow out into a more relaxed but still high-tempo beat. And the hidden tragedy of an innocent creature of nature turned intercontinental ballistic coronavirus shines through in this melancholic halftime groove. Blessing of the Moon, which plays when visiting the faraway planetoids near the skybox. Yeah, I want to cry. Don't judge me, alright? Sanctuary of the Sunken Sea. Wait. Then there's Infestation, spelled like how I would say this word while visualizing this song. Thinking about it, that's actually probably the point. You probably need an epilepsy warning with how colorful this goes with its pumping disco beats. Don't ask me why DM Dokuro went as hard as he did with this track, because I don't think even he himself knows. Not even gonna mention the jazzy 8-bit breakdown in the middle of this song. Holy shit, he made mushrooms appear in the vector scope! All of these songs managed to play with Terraria's techno-based music Scott Lloyd Shelley spearheaded when creating the original soundtrack. Very obviously synthesized sounds to create immersive music. But there are tracks in this mod that completely throw that notion out of the window to overpower the atmosphere with music almost out of place, if not for the pure quality of it. Stained Brutal Calamity is the theme of the Brimstone Witch Calamitas, the current final boss of the mod. Like another big lore boss track, it goes to act. Very obvious and very ominous choir vocals hail the end to come, or Calamity. Unlike many of the other musical pieces in Calamity, we get an entire symphony, organ and all, and when the guitar and drums finally break through, it induces a more primal and feral feeling that pervades the remainder of the track. Roar of the Jungle Dragon! Nobody will ever forget the first time we got Yara onto the second phase and heard DM Dokuro blast that opening vocal line with all the symphonic buildup of a Hans Zimmer track. Intense drum beats behind a powerful harmonic vocal and church bells to signify the almost sacred fight against Yaram's most loyal companion. The heat of the battle only gets hotter as the vocals fade and the guitar takes over as the main melody. The entire track slaps itself into the territory of pure butt rock, only rivaled by the likes of Jeff Williams' Ruby tracks. Yeah, that's an outward one, completely different fandom. Okay, look, just listen to this. Huh? See where I'm getting at, right? Guys, I'm not crazy, right? Look, I get it. It's a common song progression. Just let me have this one, please. What separates these two tracks specifically, as I'm sure many of you are aware if you've heard them in their full splendor, is the presence of very audible vocals that help to add the personal emotion of the characters. That's right, characters. Calamity focuses a lot on bosses and the combat side of things. But if that nearly 5-minute rant on the lore was anything to go by, there's a lot of care into these fightable bosses. Supreme Calamitas' theme heralds the woes of her life, taking on the arrogant gods who stole the power of the dragons and taking pleasure in their pain, all at the command of Yaram. But as she killed more and more, and realized she was being treated more like a weapon, a tool than a person, the guilt and doubt brought the Brimstone Witch back to her senses, or what was left of them, leaving her to despise the man named the God-Killer, who gave her such a purpose. Roar of the Jungle Dragon is a tragic cry as Yaron laments the consequences of its old master's battle. While he had good intentions, what he left in his wake was nothing short of calamity, and what he is now is nothing but a shadow of his former self. So much so that no matter how many life cycles it goes through, the Dragon of Rebirth can no longer stand by his side, leaving the player to take on Yaram for both of their sakes. And while I'm very aware that Dokuro would rather not have to remember these tracks ever existed, I'm sure there's a few of those actually, it's no secret that the music that he made for the Calamity OST is revered, and for very good reason, I believe. Seriously, it's too bad that the community drove him away with their incessant need for more Calamity content. Just the nature of the beast, I guess. However absolutely moronic that nature may be. I do wish people could just let creators create. It would be a nice change of pace. Hopefully he's doing well at least. Okay, I'll talk about it. If you're now just getting into Calamity, you may be a little confused when you go and look up the mod in the mod browser. Yeah, that's a lot of Calamity. There's a very unique aspect that Calamity holds over other mods in the Terraria sphere. And that's the fact that, for some reason, this mod has mods. Add-ons, as they're called. I used that word earlier to describe how Calamity adds onto and expands base Terraria to create an almost indistinguishable experience for what is ultimately a different game. These add-ons seem to be more literal takes on that. They add on to a very specific thing. Like difficulty. Why does this exist? I don't think that people are made for this. Why does the internet just seem to have a penchant for pain and torment? Are we all just hardwired wrong in the brain? Why would you ever want to do this? Some add-ons add textures and sprites. Others add recipes and quality of life changes. The most famous one makes your life a living hell. That's Infernum. We in the Terraria community seem quite obsessed with the martial arts of making things harder for ourselves. Base game, we can choose between normal, expert, and master mode, and even the dreaded legendary mode, which is only activated through inputting a seed for a specific world. Real logic literally drops you in a world designed to make your life hell. For the worthy my left ass cheek, you can check in for the insane asylum down the road if you find this fun. Do you just want to lose money? Or lose literally everything when you die? What? Why is that even an option? Even Calamity has its share of difficulties. Revengeance, death, and the sorely missed rest in peace malice mode. I killed you for a damn good reason. Never come back, you stupid The last one was literally so hard, they had to remove it. It says here no tester could even beat the Exomechs, because everything did so much damage and the supercomputer AI calculated the trajectory for 3 quadrillion different vectors and fired a pebble that would turn you into spaghetti at each and every single one. Well, now you can have it all back. Just play Infernum. People have dug out literally every biome, every single tile of rock, dirt, and hellstone for platforms that encircle the entire continent to take out some bosses in this add-on. Is this necessary? You know, at times I feel like it is. Not only can you play Infernum, but you can also play Legendary mode at the same time. Because what's the point of living? Yeah, you know, Maybe I just have too much self-preservation, but going into that by my lonesome seems like a literal waking nightmare. There's a reason that all the footage I collected was from me playing on death mode. I guess it can be fun to suffer with friends, but why would you put them through that? You horrible, horrible person. With all that said, it's pretty clear to see now the reasons why Calamity is so wonderfully ingenious. Using base Terraria, it plays into the most popular aspects of that world and creates a high-quality experience that induces curiosity, exploration, and spectacle with music, sprites, and mountains of additional content. Integrating itself almost seamlessly with the original game, it's not only perfect for the experienced Terraria veteran, but also, with enough guidance, it's great for someone who knows nothing about Terraria at all. The multitude of modes and various add-ons that similarly enhance the experience, not all too dissimilar to how Calamity enhances Terraria, gives us plenty of replayability to the game, only further emphasized by the different classes and the progressions they offer. With all the new armors and weapons, the player can feel like they can grow at a more rapid rate, becoming more powerful more quickly, and urges them to take on the next boss so beautifully crafted and loved by the developers, because they wouldn't have made 50 pages of original lore if they didn't. Yes, I'm still hung up on that. This isn't the end of Calamity. There's so much more to come. Yaram awaits our challenge, sitting on his dilapidated throne at the end of the world to see how strong we've become, and we await eagerly for the next update, hoping that it's just as good as the last. Hey, hope you enjoyed the video. I had to play through the entire Calamity mod again because my old world got sent to the Netherrealm somewhere and I couldn't speed up progression with all my old stuff. Oh well. It was fun to get back into it after almost a year anyway, so I can't be too mad. Terraria holds a special place in my heart because I got into it during a hard time in my life, and a YouTube group doing a playthrough was all I needed to take my mind off things for a while. This could have very easily been about the base game, but I decided Calamity would be a bit more fun to do, considering how much more content it has. Plus, it seems to be kind of popular right now, depending on when you're seeing this, I guess. Well, that's it from me. Like and subscribe if you got this far, it means a ton. I should probably be saying that somewhere in the middle of the video though, honestly. Well, whatever. Bye bye, and I'll see you later. Shul out. In sheer fear of saying something wrong and almost cosmic, but most importantly scattered. Whoops. I wish I could read all this out to you in a concise and digestible manner, but that's this. Stained brutal calamity is the theme of the Brimstone Reach color. The Dragon of Rebirth can no longer stand by his side, leaving the player to take care of Ramen. Ramen? Tatebayo? What?